fun to watch names. It's going to be the good old UE Metal who's been on the rise, but in their way stands the Leviathan. At the top of the leaderboards is going to be 3DB himself as we hop into this one. And I mean, this one should be interesting because I mentioned UE Metal has been on the rise. UE Metal who was able to qualify directly to Golden League, if I recall correctly. And it's no surprise. Like, this person has been hard on the grind. I still don't know who they are. They're currently 106th on the leaderboards, but they've been as high as like 40, 50, I believe. So they're definitely no pushover. And I'm kind of intrigued to see what they can do. This went up to 712 games played. They kind of came out of nowhere about, I want to say 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago. And they very much committed. It's almost like they got into the game, like they got Age of Empires 4 for Christmas. Some people would argue whether that was a great present at that point in our history. But they've been enjoying the game ever since, and I think this person has a lot of potential. And this was the Civ I think we originally saw them on. Like, this was one of the Civs I recall them playing a lot, was France. And it is going to be on Dry Arabia. That's something we have to highlight straight away, is that this should be home field to France, because Mongols don't play how they used to. They don't get the same benefits they used to. This isn't really a pick always for open maps like Dry Arabia anymore. I'd say, actually, I like Mongols a lot more when I see them on more condensed maps or these kind of choke point-oriented maps or the more greedy maps, because I think their timing really is castle now. If you're forced to drag out Feudal, you're not playing to your advantage. And I think that's where France is very exploitative in this matchup. This is a Civ that is kind of king of tempo control next to England, right? There aren't many Civs that play full in on Feudal as aggressively as this Civ. And there aren't many that are as good at it as this Civ. And if you drag out that Feudal too long, it's just going to be to UE's benefit the longer the game goes on. So I'm kind of intrigued to see what B's strategy is overall going to be. He's going to do the atypical opening right now for all Mongol players, which is to instantly drop the pasture. This has been becoming very popular. It used to be that you drop a rack straight away, or you drop a stables. Those were back in the days where you'd outpost rush, or you go for pro scouts. But understanding that there's no real value, intricate value in getting a rack or a stable at this stage, you want to invest your initial wood into padding your economy, so you're less reliant on RNG, aka how many sheep did I get. Meanwhile, on the other side, Yui has already got plenty of sheep back in the base. I believe Yui did go for a second scout, so another reason exactly why B should be going for this pasture early on, because he won't be able to get the amassment of sheep that he would like, because he hasn't gone for the second scout. And this is another thing that's becoming more popular with Mongols, is ignoring the second scout meta, simply because, in theory, your Khan can cover a lot more ground due to maneuver arrows, but more importantly, you don't really need the sheep if you're going pastures, right? Like, you're padded on that. You're sorted. And this is infinite scaling on food, right? Once you get the 150 wood investment out of the way. On top of that, you've already got idle time if you're the Mongols when you move your TC. Because usually you're moving at a decent margin to get next to a wood line, next to a gold line. You're not just unpacking it straight away. And even if you were unpacking it straight away, you're still losing some efficiency there. Especially when you're up against a Civ like France, you just can't afford any gaps in your eco lines because you know you're already going to be behind the Civ that produces villagers quicker than you. In the meantime, B will just deny some sheep from return to base. Another popular thing you can do with the Khan. If I can't have it, you can't have it. And double pasture already, not too surprising. Sometimes we'll see free at this stage. I think you want to curb your excitement on sheep right now. Like, you know, B, come on, bro. You're Russian, you're not Welsh. Chill at 2. Probably drop a Rax now to protect yourself against what's coming. Or maybe you go into some other military building. I don't think you got archery range if you know knights are coming. It's got to either be, I'd say, go stable for horsemen or go into a Rax for spearmen. He's playing quite condensed, but he's still exploitable, right? Like, if he finds himself aggressed by knights, the knights might not be able to easily dive his eco lines because they're so packed together right now. But what they can do is they can snipe out this eco district, right? The Uvu and the pastures. And the pastures aren't exactly tanky. B, quite delayed on this tech up, actually. And that's because of the initial investment, right? This is the big difference. You look at the numbers, you're like, why is B so far behind on his tech up? Well, it's because he invested 300 wood, 450 wood actually here, right? For the passive generation, the Uvu, and then he invested 150 wood in each of these pastures. So that's a very big sink in your early game economy, and it will delay your feudal timing. But what he has done is he's given himself that scaling. Like, over time, this is going to return dividends. Meanwhile, Yui didn't have that same investment, right? Like, there was a go required as well by B. So that's 100, which equals out to this house and this lumber camp. And then it's just another 150 here that's been added to UE Metal's economy. right, with the mill, the house, and the mining camp. So overall, it puts B at a deficit, and that's why he's behind. So scouts will go out to shift out after returning even more sheep. I wonder if it's going to be pro scouts. Yeah, it is. Makes sense. Like, at the moment he pulls both scouts out towards the base at the same time, it kind of seems obvious what he's doing here. And this does mean that he's playing, I'd say, a little bit gambly. He's assuming that B isn't going to build an aggressive building to deny him. However, with this outpost going down, and the vision is going to maintain as you run past, he might knee-jerk react and then get a military building down, at which point you won't get all of these carcasses for free. And Yui, although it won't be obvious that he's got pro scouts yet, I feel like if he moves to gather those carcasses the moment pro scouts is complete, that's when B should know, and he should react with a military building. But you can see he's delaying it as long as possible because he wants to make sure he has options available by being up in feudal. And this is how you get punished for late timings, by the way. Like, this is some people are like, it's just Dark Age to feudal age. How much difference does it really make? Depending on how loose your economy is, it can make a big difference. Depending on what your overarching strategy is, it can make a huge difference. If you're planning to, say, go pro scouts, this can cripple you, obviously. So, like, pro scouts is an example where you always want to get feudal instantly. If you're playing the Mongols and you've got your Uvu away from your base, once again, you can be punished. But it looks like because the tech up's coming out, Yui is going to show some respect, understanding the Arrow Slits upgrade is going to be there. And because B has dropped this outpost, I assume he's just going straight into castle naked with no military. And he proves me wrong. Straight away the archery range. So I wonder, what is the thought here? I think for him, because he saw both scouts go north instead of splitting to go south and north, his assumption is that this is a pro scouts play. Like, if Yui just wanted to keep eyeballs on his base, he would have sent one scout to the north and one to the south, so he stood around B and saw everything he done. But B's a smart cookie. He understands if both of these scouts are heading north, it's for good reason, and it's because pro scouts has been researched. So that's why he drops the archery range and looks to get the Magadai, so now he can raid actively and punish this play by Yui Mel. This is really smart. And he might get the first influx of carcasses back. And, oh, Yui. He's a smart cookie too. Not only are the Horsemen going to have value against the Hardened Khan, but because you've dropped the archery range and are going for double Magadai production, remember that the Horsemen can gap close on the Magadai, and they get bonus damage against this very squishy unit. And this unit is not cheap, by the way. Remember, it's 120 food and 40 gold. This cripples your castle age timing every time you produce some of these. So you definitely have to find value. And the Yam will be enough to scare away Yui. That's the difference maker, by the way. If you are in range of your Deerstone or an outpost, you get that Yam. It's 1.87 move speed compared to the 1.88. It's almost impossible at that stage for Yui Metal's Horsemen to gap close without dying. Magadai straight across towards the base. Gonna pivot around to the south side. More are being produced soon. And Yui might wait on more Horsemen, but right now is not producing them. And here you go. This is the awkward issue. The maneuver arrow is still available. And there it is. We'll fire it off. Khan's going to tank the shots. They're trying to gap close on the Magadai. Magadai kind of shooting all of these different targets. The Khan being brought low on health. Might die here. One more poke should be good enough. And he's down. And the Magadai in trouble as well. With the missile resistance on these Horsemen, it might be difficult for two of them to pick these lads off. They've served their purpose. And new metal's underway. Wow. This is full greed on both sides. B, he just tried to deny with a small force the scout gathering. He failed to do so. Yui is now fully exploiting this to go for a tech up straight into the guild hall, but look at the Magadai moving in. They need to target in the villages. 3 Horsemen might be enough to keep them away. Remember, these Magadai have 0 resistance to melee or missile and only 85 health. And that makes it very difficult to assassinate here. You can see one's going to fall. And B, I think he's in trouble a little here. He needs to tech up. He's underway with a step readout himself, but I don't think he expected this. I think Yui completely caught him off guard with this immediate tech up. I think from B's perspective, with the vision he's playing with, because his Khan had to serve as like the vanguard with Magadai, and he wasn't able to scout with it, his assumption is that Yui was going to build more Horsemen, he was going to aggress around the midfield, and then secure these carcasses. And that was going to give B wiggle room while he's getting some aggression out to tech up himself ahead of his opponent. But no dice. Yui's first up. B is going to be delayed. And although he will get that initial bigger advantage via the step readout's 50% additional drop-off, at the start of Castle, it has to be said that Yui has some flexibility now. He's beamed to the punchline. He's getting a lot of value out of Pro Scouts. His opponent isn't even competing in that regard. And now B kind of has to make another adjustment, right? He has to drop a new military building. Right now, the composition doesn't feel good because Magadai feel worthless because the Horsemen are showing. Crossbowmen aren't going to help against that. Like, your only choice is to build stable and then possibly something else. But instead, he goes for double archery range. Intriguing. And also the prayer tent. This, I like. B is very good at this. B understands that if he's going for a quick kind of tech up timing, like, it doesn't mean you have to stop being greedy the moment you arrive in castle. Actually, quite the opposite, especially when you play as the Mongols. Like we just said, you get all this additional resource via the step readout drop-offs. Put it to good use. Like, yes, the prayer tent's pricey at 200 wood initially, but the price of the shaman at 150 gold is trivial for you because you have so much additional gold drop-off. And now you going to ramp up that military district. Is finally switching over the knights, and these are going to be lethal up at Castle Age Tech soon. I expect you to get maybe 4 or 5 of these knights out and then get the upgrade. It's not really worthwhile getting instantly if you don't have the troops in the field. In the meantime, when we look at the income as well, you can kind of see where B is suffering, right? Like, he's losing the game. The Deers aren't really being prevented. The Magadai can punish the scouts a little here, but you can see they see them first. Like, this is the problem. B, because his Khan got assassinated and he's back in base, he's not here to provide vision, so you can't make any maneuvers. This is the issue with the Magadai gamble. It's very flimsy for many reasons, but I think one of the critical details to highlight is that if you don't have the Khan available with them, they don't really do anything. They're a little bit too squishy to go do things alone, right? At this stage in the game. And then when you add in all these different details, like the fact they cost 160 resources each, the fact that they don't have like much health, and their damage really isn't that high for what they do, like, you can see these catalysts, right? You can see these elements that are adding into the picture that makes this unit look pretty ugly. And it's unfortunate as well. I feel like I've talked about this before, but I think one thing the Mongols could benefit from is maybe a unique tech that reduces the cost of Magadai once they get to Castle and beyond. Oh, Wallalo. It's going to be a big fat fail. And the first Lancer spotted as well. B beaten to the punchline. Knight's already riding towards his base, and that military district is fully exposed. So he needs to be a little bit careful. Yam will allow him to peel off. But 3 Knights is problematic, and every time that Lancer runs in, he's just giving away more of his life. Looks like he will back off, respecting the Yam movement speed difference here. However, the Lancer, he's kind of dangling himself near death here. Looks like Yui doesn't want to get involved, though. Sees the second Lancer coming through, doesn't want to give over the number advantage. Instead, will be happy that he's pushed his opponent back into his base. Has got the switch up into Arbiter, also bring out some archers as well. And still has a few healthy horsemen that can chase down the Magadai. So overall, the composition from Metal looks a lot better than B's right now. I think B needs some sort of transition. And I wonder if it might be worth getting crossbows himself. It does feel a little bit counterintuitive just because Arbiters are better crossbowmen, right? Like, they have a lot more flexibility, a lot more tankiness to them. But I do feel like B needs to do something soon because it has to be said, this specific matchup, I don't favor Mongols when you both hit Imperial. I think Yui dominates the game. I think France is actually better in Imperial Age. Like, you can't match their Knights, right? Because your Lancers suck in comparison to French Knights. Magadai really aren't a bounce-back option in Imperial Age. They're really underwhelming. And then your Arbiters versus crossbow situation, like, it gets worse when things like Gambesons come into the picture. So everything just starts to look thumbs up for the French player. And B will move in now with the Magadai. It's not really that efficient of a trade, though, right? Like, you can see how quickly they die. He even upgraded them to veteran status. He's full all-in on this. And it's going to be peculiar to see if it pays off, because this is very costly. This is very strenuous on his economy for such a squished unit. Meanwhile, backstab. Oh, the villagers! They're running away from safety! Yui trying to wrap around, getting blocked on his way around all these buildings. It looks like B does a lap of his base and will live with the villagers. And now the Knights won't be so lucky. They're going to get backstabbed now. The attack speed arrow coming out. The chase through the Yam movement speed. They're going to be gap closed upon. They won't even find 1 or 2 villagers for their trouble. Instead, they're going to be butchered. And that is painful. That's a heavy hit into Yui Metal's military count and his eco side when you consider how costly these units are going to be to replace. And B, I said I don't know if the Magadai were going to work, but I'm being convinced. He's up to 13 damage on each of these Magadai. He's got a nice critical mass of 12 now. His opponent went hard into Arbiters instead of Archers. So really, Yui Metal has no good counter right now. And this is what I was saying, like, Castle versus, like, Imperial, right? Like, if this game goes too late, it's bad for B. And B, being the genius he is, has identified exactly what he needs to do to end this game in Castle. And Magadai, surprisingly to many people, is the answer. And so many Magadai, so many Lancers riding in now. Fight underway. Knights have to peel back. They can't fight this. And a second TC, Yui Metal. I think he might have just been caught with his hand in the cookie jar because B is riding all the way through. He's looking for targets, squishy ones at that. The Magadai will stand their ground. They're taking a lot of fire from the TCs right now. B throwing away this army quite haphazardly. We'll shift across now, though, onto the gold line. Fires upon a few of the villagers, will butcher a few of them down and keeps chasing even deeper. There's not enough room to garrison them all in. He says, yes, the Magadai will die, but you will die alongside them. And there's nothing you can do either. 13 damage, 1.25 attack speed, firing on the go, and so many villagers dead for Yui Metal. Oh my goodness, he did not expect this. They're still alive. They still have not died because the TC fire is on the Lancers half the time. The Khan is going to die, but do you actually give a damn? Like, look at the damage done. B is up at 44 eco. Now, Yui Metal down at 42. Remember, he already had a lead because he is France, and he just lost that lead entirely. Lancer's still chasing in. We'll club down another villager. So many dead units here, but at the end of it, like, if you look at the military side, it's not like B sacrificed his lead. Yui Metal lost most of his army. He only has 9 military. Meanwhile, B is up at 10, and now he has the eco lead. But he does need to renew the aggression now that he sees the secondary TC. This was a very ballsy play, and I think the concept from B was like, okay, if he's only one TC, this is really good. This is game winning. The moment he sees the secondary TC, B understands like he's kind of in too deep to run away now, so he just needs to trade. But that does mean he needs to renew the aggression and go in again. And the beautiful thing about Dry Arabia, folks, is if you aren't the aggressor, you are in big doo-doo. Because if you don't fully enclose yourself, you can get pinched. And if you look, Yui Metal is not fully enclosed. There's gaps in the north, there's gaps in the south, and these gaps will be exploited by the cavalry. Knights. This hurts. Look at the damage these guys do. What? What? All right, got some moonwalking Magadai there. Going to move in range now. This hurts so much. 13 damage and only 5 missile resistance to the veteran Royal Knights. And Yui Metal, it really feels like Yui's missed the timing. Missed the window. Because at this stage, B has options. Look at the amount of gold being held in reserve. This affords the Magadai situation as you can trade for the additional food as well. You now have the choice to either go in and end the game now or beat your opponent to Imperial. But why would you wait? He goes in again. And the butchering will continue. Magadai able to shift around quicker than the archers can pursue. They will break out the other side, but delaying Yui's economy once more. B still just about keeping the eco lead. However, bigger problems now for Yui. He just extracted the last of the gold vein. And the next one is out in no man's land. If he doesn't fully enclose, then it's kind of curtains closed at this stage, right? Like, you don't have a way of flexing your army to guard the backside here as well as the front. You need to fully enclose your base. Is it me or is there more troops here than last time? He is not slowing down. And that's concerning. Like, remember, he's benefiting from the Uvu a lot here. So that's padding him even further. And right now, if you look at Yui's situation, it's pretty grim. You have 2 stables and 2 archer ranges. You actually don't have surplus military production lines to replace your losses. You also don't really have surplus resources right now because that aforementioned depletion on gold. Wait, has he even fixed that? Oh my god, he's going for a fort. Keeping the Magadai in again. And the Lancers as well. The archers can't answer this. And this might be the final nail in the coffin. He's going to call GG. He has no way out. He didn't have a palisade gate to get through the wall. He's going to give it over. And B showing you the Magadai in 2022 can still be the answer. I can't believe I said that today. But so well played out of B. I mean, really big credit where credit is due. Like, the Magadai, I question marked it at first. He went for it initially. It made sense to harass the scouts. I think at that stage, B had a choice, and he was very smart to identify it. Most players would have done those initial Magadai, and they would have said, that was just to harass my opponent. I'm going to go back to, like, your atypical man-at-arms, Lancer-type spam, whoopsie-doo. Instead, B says, wait a second. Didn't Magadai used to be called broken by French players because their knights couldn't touch them? And wouldn't that also give me a way of raiding into the French base? And once he has that fort, he's like, I'm just going to double down Magadai. He goes crazy with it, in fact. Like, he's investing so much of his surplus resource into Magadai production that it becomes a throwaway unit. But it's so fast to move in that it can actually trade efficiently onto these villages. And I think something that hurt Yui further is he never had textiles. So these villages were dying quite fast to a unit that does 13 damage per shot. You can see how that number adds up quickly, even more so when you add a Khan into the mixer with his attack speed arrow. Really well played by B. I love what he's presented here. He's presented that Castle Age is still the way to go for Mongols, as I was talking about previously so many times the last 2 weeks. But he's identified that actually Magdai have a timing and a window of opportunity at the beginning of the Castle Age that we all seem to have forgotten about.